I wasn't really sure what to look forward to when I first started the project. I think I was still more focused on kind of improving my skills as an editor generally, just from a technical standpoint. But retrospectively, I'd say one of the most fun scenes to edit would be the scene where Summers goes to explore Johnny's apartment. There's a lot of suspense. It starts really slow. It really ramps up a lot, and then it kind of you kind of have to come back down and settle the emotions to carry the story forward. So I thought that was really a really fun scene to edit, and I was really happy with how it turned out. I was very curious to see kind of what kind of story it was, because I feel like you would expect a very female-centric story, and I do think that that's basically the case with Grim Whimsy, but it also it doesn't feel like that's the only thing going on, but I do think that you can feel a sort of feminine touch to it. There's a lot of empathy throughout the entire story. There's a lot of heavy things that I think a male perspective may not have captured in the same way, especially in the later scenes when you're kind of getting to understand who Trixie is as a character and what has really sort of brought her to this point. I think that if the roles were reversed, I think something about it would feel cliche. So there's kind of a unique element to having a woman behind the helm, not only behind the scenes but on camera as well. Especially in the later scenes of the film, and I've told Alissa this a number of times. I'm very impressed with the performances, but especially that of Trixie as someone who has to direct and be on camera and provides such intensity. The performance is I'm sure mentally exhausting, but also physically exhausting, and I could hear the strain in her voice and stuff like that. So it's just pretty incredible to watch, and often terrifying. Well, this is the first feature film I've ever edited, and so from the beginning it's just been a challenge, kind of even just like the little technical things like organizing the files and making sure I'm setting everything up properly within the project. But it's also been a very intense and powerful exercise in terms of my creativity, and certainly the biggest challenge has just been balancing what I would want versus what Alissa would want versus what's best for the film. So it's a good balancing act, and I think that it's also been a really fulfilling experience to work with someone who has a very strong vision for their film, but also is willing to listen and be collaborative. It's turning out really well, and I don't think it would be as strong as it could be if we weren't able to do that. Working on Grim Whimsy has taught me that if I'm gonna stick with being an editor, I'm gonna have to have a lot more patience than I'm gonna want, and I think that that's an important lesson to learn. A lot of the things that I've made before have had little to no dialogue, and I really do enjoy a story that doesn't need that, and that's just simply not the case with Grim Whimsy. There's just so much that needs to be said, especially by Trixie, who just has so much pain that she needs to let out, and she needs people to understand. And so editing around these very dialogue heavy scenes, and I initially was kind of dreading that because one, I wasn't used to it, and two, I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to do it well. It's very easy to fall into this sort of dragnetty kind of dialogue where it's whoever's talking is on screen, and when they're done with their line, it moves to the next person, and that's the easiest way to do it. But it's certainly the least creative way, and it's definitely not a challenge. And I think that the audiences who see those types of work, like, it is more interesting to see for certain lines of dialogue how someone's reacting to that, or perhaps there's dialogue over a flashback or some other sort of cutaway. And I think that's part of what's been the challenge around editing this is just making sure that it doesn't stagnate, and that everything's engaging. Just 'cause there is so much dialogue, and it needs to be heard because it's important to the context of everything that's happened. But in terms of structuring the scene around the dialogue, I've actually really enjoyed that, and I found it very I don't know. It's just been a new challenge, and it's something that I wasn't looking forward to, but now I'm actually glad that I've got the opportunity to work on those things. Editing is embedded in every aspect of filmmaking, start to finish. When you're just throwing around ideas randomly, you kind of have to figure out what those ideas should be, and then you start writing it, and you can take however long you need to write. You'll write however many drafts, because you have to edit and you have to refine it. And then when you get to this, you get to storyboarding, and then you're actually on set. And once you're on set, you may even just basically throw out the script, change it up. The storyboard has to change just because of practical things. You modify how the performances are, and then obviously afterwards you have to put everything together, and you have to consider all of those elements, and then the other elements like the color and the sound and the music and things like that. So I think the way I would describe editing is you have this big block of marble, and you know what you want it to look like at the end. Some a statue of a person or holding an apple or whatever it needs to be. And as you're working, maybe things don't go as planned, and you have to kind of reshape it, or you get down to how you want it to look, and maybe it doesn't look the way you wanted it to, so you have to kind of adjust it. It's just all about refining it until you have what you need. The heart of filmmaking, and really any creative process, is just about refining everything until it's as close to perfection as you can get it. And you'll never achieve perfection, but you can damn sure try, and you can't do that without editing. And specifically the case of Dr. Summers, it's a lot of just hubris. Like he was trying to maintain his reputation. They even make a joke about it, like right away in the beginning. Like he probably does, or at least did, have some sort of God complex, and to have a problem that he couldn't solve, instead of acknowledging that and being accountable, he just kind of handles it poorly or sort of hastily, and it obviously comes back to bite him. Many years later, it really does force you as a viewer to question, how much did he really know that he was doing wrong? Like that's sort of what Trixie is pushing for, is he can sit there and react to these reveals about a lot of the things that like Neelix and the rest of the staff were covering up, but it's hard to imagine that he didn't know at least more than he's letting on, or at least that's how you feel. And I think it pushes you to sympathize with Trixie's character a little bit more, and you almost root for her in a way. She goes out of her way to make sure that everyone who wronged her, or that she believes wronged her, knows exactly what happened and why she's doing this to them, and she wants them to feel the same level of pain. And you look at Summers, who I truly believe, and I think the audience will believe, like, that he had good intentions, but especially when he was younger, he's naive, and I think it's easy to think that just because we're trying our best or doing the best doesn't mean that no one will get hurt in the process. It's on whatever perspective you have, that's how you're going to react, and that's where those consequences come into play, is people reacting from their perspective. After watching this film, I really hope people, I hope the first reaction is like, wow, that was intense and that was really fun. And it's kind of a dark film, but, and maybe fun isn't necessarily the right word, but I just hope that folks get really engaged. And I think one of the biggest takeaways, everything we do has a consequence, whether it's good or bad, and we just need to kind of be more empathetic towards each other, and just know that even if we have good intentions, recognize when those good intentions could still have negative impacts on people, and hold yourself accountable to the things that you're doing. And even if you do everything right and it still has a negative impact on someone, you just you have to kind of own it, or it could come back to bite you, sometimes in the grimmest of ways.